Hello everyone and welcome back to day 5 of our Eastern State series. This is the final episode of the trip and we're ending it off with a bang with what very well might be the 64th and next national park in the United States. But first, if you haven't already seen our video from New River Gorge National Park in West Virginia, definitely go give that a watch first. It wasn't originally the plan to visit the newest national park in the country and potentially the next national park in the country one day apart, but I think it's pretty cool how that all worked out. We stopped by this place because we wanted something exciting to look forward to on our long day of driving to New York City. Going to the Delaware Water Gap was a good idea because A, it eliminated all tolls from the drive, B, split up the drive at least relatively, and C, was just an awesome place to visit overall. I clearly didn't do my homework though because I was under the impression that the waterfalls found at the Delaware Water Gap were going to be smaller, medium-sized like the majority of falls you'd find in the eastern US. But I couldn't have been more wrong. These waterfalls were huge. So huge in fact that the Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area is home to Pennsylvania's 3 tallest waterfalls as well as New Jersey's tallest waterfall. Now admittedly, we didn't get around to experiencing New Jersey's tallest, Buttermilk Falls, because it seemed like the least impressive between all the others we experienced. Keep in mind, the sun goes down very early this time of year, and considering the fact that we had to drive 5.5 hours today, we only had a few hours at this park. It's for that reason that we really had to pick and choose what we wanted to do here, and didn't have time to do any of the mountain trails either, like Mount Tammany, which sounds fantastic. Of course, the Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area gets its name from the Delaware River that flows through the park along with all the recreational activities that come with it. In recent years, the redesignation from a national recreation area to a national park has become a serious possibility and has become increasingly popular. I'm going to leave that discussion for the end of the video where we'll deep dive into the pros, cons, and concerns that come with this new classification. But first, let's talk about our day at the Delaware Water Gap. Our first of 3 stops was Bushkill Falls, which is a privately owned and operated attraction that ironically might be the most famous location in the park. Well, technically it's just outside park boundaries, which is why they get away with the private business thing, but I don't think anyone is all too upset about it, including the National Park Service, because the way they're maintaining this place is incredible. However, it does come with some caveats. First, admission to Bushkill Falls will cost anywhere between $10 and $20 US depending on the date, your age, etc. It may seem like a money grab on the surface, but trust me, it's worth it. Also, Bushkill Falls is closed in late November, December, January, February, and March. Then, for April and the 4 weeks of November they are open, they have a strict inclement weather policy. While it was pretty cold during our visit, it was still perfectly sunny, so thankfully this wasn't anything we had to worry about. Upon arrival, you'll notice a spacious parking lot and these cute buildings that make this place feel more developed than I anticipated. But like I keep saying, this is only for the better because the way they built their trails here are impeccable. They decided to use these elevated wooden platforms that even have logs acting as handrails. Like, how cool is that? Now, I'm sure you'll notice very early on just how awesome Bushkill Falls is. The waterfall stands 100 feet tall but was flowing incredibly hard during our visit. I was honestly shocked when I first laid my eyes on this thing because I had never seen a waterfall this impressive on the East Coast. Not to say that they don't exist, because I know they do, but as someone that hasn't extensively traveled the Eastern US like I have the Western US, this was a big surprise. The wonderful trail takes you all around Bushkill Falls, giving vantage points from above and from down below. You'll even get the chance to see an unnamed lower Bushkill Falls layer that descends from the river directly after. This alone would have been a worthy eastern waterfall to check out, but the fact that it doesn't even have a name says all you need to know about this place. It is to my knowledge that this trail is actually a full 2-mile loop that includes 7 smaller additional waterfalls. I'm not totally sure how prominent these are, but it's definitely something I'll be checking out the next time I come here. Our next short hike was a super easy 1-mile out and back trail incorporating 2 waterfalls, Silver Thread Falls and Dingman's Falls. Now, there's 2 routes to get here from Bushkill Falls that each take about 25 minutes. I'd recommend you take Federal Road all the way to Dingsman Falls Visitor Center because when we came via Johnny B Road, the road was suddenly blocked off for about a half mile. Because of this, we ended up having to walk an additional 1.5 to 2 miles extra, which put our third and final stop in jeopardy since the sun was soon to set. However, we did get to the visitor center parking lot relatively fast and were pleased by the simplicity of the actual trail. It was a really well maintained wooden boardwalk trail that takes you on a peaceful stroll through the tall trees and over a river twice. Pretty much right away, you'll be greeted by Silver Thread Falls, which is a tall but thin waterfall that I like to call a ribbon fall. That said, of all of the ribbon waterfalls I'd ever seen, this was probably the absolute most impressive one. That's why I think Silver Thread Falls is actually quite underrated, as it often gets overlooked in favor of the other waterfalls at the Delaware Water Gap. I like how both of its tiers were pretty much even in height, culminating a total of 80 feet tall. But if you were impressed by Silver Thread Falls, the big boss of this trail will absolutely blow your mind. Dingsman Falls is the second tallest waterfall in Pennsylvania, standing an impressive 130 feet tall. Like Bushkill Falls, this one was flowing very well and had one of the most unique and unconventional shapes for a waterfall I've ever seen. The way it flows diagonally into the river below is actually really fascinating. Walking beyond Dingsman Falls, the trail does continue further by following the river, however we only went up enough stairs to get an upper view of the waterfall before turning back around. This was a truly incredible waterfall, and while it wasn't my favorite by a long shot given all of the other great falls we saw in the park, I would give this the top spot on a list of Delaware Water Gap waterfalls. Our final stop of the day was Raymond Skill Falls, which as usual had a well-built, short, and accessible trail to access Pennsylvania's tallest waterfall. Raymond Skill Falls stands 150 feet tall, 20 feet taller than Dingsman Falls, but it doesn't look that way. The culprit? This lower layer right here, which extends the height enough to make it the state's tallest waterfall. That said, I think I would personally consider this to be two separate waterfalls in conjunction with one another, giving Dingsman Falls the title for the actual tallest falls in Pennsylvania. But whatever the case, all layers of Raymond Skill Falls are very impressive. Seeing this one and realizing that the sheer size of the others wasn't a fluke solidified my opinion that in terms of scenery alone, Delaware Water Gap absolutely deserves to be redesignated as a national park. However, it's not that simple. While we were driving around the park, we noticed these no national park signs scattered around the neighborhoods that exist within park boundaries. It's to my knowledge that the new national park boundary shown here would attempt to avoid most residential spaces within the Delaware Water Gap. But I don't think the bulk of the controversy is that these people would risk getting evaded from park premises. Matter of fact, I think an agreement would probably be made between the National Park Service and the residents within the park, allowing them to remain in place since the houses seemed like they had been there long before the park was designated a national recreation area in the 1960s. We've seen this happen before, with the most recent example being New River Gorge National Park in 2020. I think the big problem in this situation is that the people that live here genuinely do care about the park and its environment. The Delaware Water Gap already received up to 4.3 million visitors in 2021, which put it in the top 15 most visited national park sites, just behind places like Grand Canyon National Park in Arizona and Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. Now just imagine if it were redesignated as a national park, the sheer influx of tourists coming from New York City and Philadelphia. It would absolutely elevate the Delaware Water Gap into the top 5 most visited national parks, I am sure of that. However, if crowding is a concern, you can always introduce a reservation system on peak days, like what many of the most popular national parks introduced during the COVID-19 pandemic. Ultimately, I think how much you support the redesignation relies on how much you trust the National Park Service, which I do, but also the general public to do the right thing, which is a much harder thing to say, especially with New York City so close by. As much as I do love that city with all my heart, it is absolute chaos and there's no way around that. So I do hope the Delaware River National Park proposal does come to be, but I also hope that agreements and conversations can be had amongst those who share deep concerns and legitimate concerns about the park's future. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my opinion in the comment section. I will absolutely keep an open mind. Whatever the case, this place is totally worth the visit, as the waterfalls and trails that I experienced drastically exceeded my expectations. Thank you all so much for sticking with me, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye guys.